Hello and welcome to Retro Reviews, my channel where I review my favorite retro video games of all time, as well as some modern releases I have recently finished. Wanted to get on really fast and give a late night video just because I had some extra time and I was feeling like talking about something that I'm really passionate about and that really bugs me to this day, and I know it bugs a lot of people, and that's Nintendo's problem with emulation. Now, if you've been following stories of the past several months, you might have seen a headline that says that like 87% of all games in the United States are in danger of being lost due to no methods of preservation. And the best preservation method that we really have at this point is people that have made ROMs out of their files and dumped them online. There are tons of archives of these files, of these old video games being put up online for file sharing sites. Now, to be honest and fair to the companies that made these games and to the publishers and such, that is an illegal practice. Emulators themselves, you can download an emulator off the internet, and that is totally fair. That is 100% legal. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But ROMs, dumping your ROMs online and sharing them for other people, and you downloading them, that is illegal. The way that you can do it legally to actually emulate your video games is by uploading your own copy of the game. So you get your disc or your cartridge, whatever, and you put it onto your computer and you dump your specific ROM files onto your computer, and then you can utilize them in an emulator. That's the way you do it legally. But for so many of these games, again, 87% of all games here, are just going to be lost to time because they're not being published anymore. You can't buy them anywhere except secondhand with physical copies. And in the future, when games don't have physical releases at all, you won't be able to get those games, period. But for all the games that are older and have physical copies, if you want to get one legally, you have to go out and buy a copy. And secondhand copies go for a lot of money if they're a more niche or rare game. Or it's just really hard to find them because no one's selling them or no one really has them anymore. So a lot of these titles that might not even be very good are just in danger of being lost. And that's really a huge problem because we don't want to lose such a huge piece of gaming history. I have talked about this subject before, but not through the perspective of Nintendo here. The reason I have such a problem with Nintendo, and so many people do, is how they go after these ROM sharing sites and even emulators themselves. Like I said before, emulators of consoles are legal. The problem is when Nintendo goes after some of them, they can use a lot of the way they've lawyered themselves up. They can use a lot of their influence, their power and everything to take down some of these sites. Now, to be fair, as much as I can here, when they went after like the Nintendo Switch emulator and they're going after like 3DS emulator, the people that published those emulators were utilizing Patreon to give access to these, like, I think, early access to builds and such. Utilizing like funds from people and utilizing Patreon and stuff, accepting money from people and then giving them a product like an emulator is not technically in the terms of use. You need to be doing it free. If they had done it from just directly from themselves and not accepted any donations, it would have been okay. But the problem, there's still a problem here because emulators are totally fine. You should be able to emulate your game. And the people that made these emulators were not responsible for the people pirating a ton of video games from the Nintendo Switch. They're only responsible for the emulator itself. Nintendo took issue, though, with so many people pirating Tears of the Kingdom, and that resulting in a hit to their sales. They think they cited several million people pirated the copy ahead of the release, and they blamed emulators like I believe it's the Yuzu emulator, if I'm not mistaken. And that was really that's not good. It's not right. It's not acceptable. But because they took in money and had some of their videos online talking about how you can, like some tutorials on how to get these games onto your emulator, they were able to effectively shut down the emulator and seek damages from the developers. So it really sucks to see because any emulator to preserve a console is so vital. The PlayStation 3 is just barely getting like a good amount of support in terms of emulation because it's such a hard console to emulate. But we finally have methods to emulate some of the PlayStation 3 games. They're working really hard to get them working and up and running on big PCs and on like Steam Deck and stuff. So having just a console emulator is so vital. There are other Switch emulators out there, and I'm sure that they won't be able to erase the Yuzu emulator off the face of the internet because nothing goes away forever. But they're going to do their very best to get it off. And everybody that wants to have the Yuzu emulator, wants to have access to that, should go and find a build now, really, if they really want access to it, or to get a different one so that they can have a way to emulate their Switch games for future preservation. Again, this is all preservation that we're talking about. That's the most important thing for these video games, because a lot of them, especially going into the future, like I said, with digital releases, it's going to be so much harder to preserve a lot of these games. So if we can preserve our physical games and make digital copies, our own digital copies, and have our own little archives, that's really important. And my biggest problem with Nintendo, the way they went after these emulators really sucks, because again, preservation and everything, but going after old ROMs is where I really take a lot of umbrage. They have their rights, they have the rights to protect their intellectual properties, and I understand piracy is a big problem with the Switch, so I'm going to set that aside for now. I'm going to say, you know what? I am not in their department. I don't run their numbers, so I don't see all the things that are happening on their number side. So that Switch emulator maybe contributed to that. I'm going to ignore that for now. But I don't ignore them going after all these old video games from all their old platforms. They do have their like Switch Online systems. They have their SNES, Nintendo Entertainment System, the Nintendo 64, and Game Boy Advance. They have the library on there, and I can see them going after ROMs that they're going to publish and put on their service. It kind of makes sense. They want you to buy their service and utilize their games on that property, and they don't want you just going and getting them for free on a file sharing site. I do understand that point. And again, this is totally their legal right to do. They are absolutely 100% allowed to do that, and we can't really do anything about that. The problem is all the other games. Like I said before, so many niche titles or otherwise that are just going to be lost into the ether if all these sites get shut down. I am not going to advocate for pirating ROMs online, but for old games that there's no way to get a copy, what else are we supposed to do? I don't want people to lose these games. I want people to experience them and get the chance to play them if they want to. And having an archive online is something that we should just have. We have archives for like pretty much every other form of media. Why can't we have backup archives for all this old media that's no longer being produced? Nintendo going after those sites and trying to shut them down just sucks for anybody that enjoys classic video games, and I really, really hate it. I'm kind of all about ethical piracy. Not saying that I do that. I back up my own games. I play my own ROMs. But, man, ethical piracy seems like the only real solution here. And it sucks that is the case. I wish that companies like Nintendo or Sony, Microsoft, whoever, anybody that publishes video games would be okay with these really old games that are going to be lost if we don't preserve them and put them online, would be okay with an archive of some sort. Let us play and experience these old titles. You're not going to make money off of them either way. Let us play them. The ones that you have on your online systems that you're re-releasing your classic games, sure, don't allow those ones. Let me have all the other games. I really just can't stand when these corporations go after sites, especially ones that like only house these classic games. They don't house any of the new stuff. They're not responsible for these pirated ROMs for the Nintendo Switch or like the PlayStation 4, anything like that. It's just classic games. Let us have those, please. I just hate seeing them going after and winning these lawsuits because it sets a bad precedent for the rest of the industry. So it's just going to shut down more and more, and we're going to lose those archives. I really, really want to see them. And so it's hard for me to want to be a Nintendo fan. I grew up with Nintendo consoles. I've loved them for a long time. They make some of the most innovative and interesting games. They can make a game about an Italian plumber that you essentially play the same story for decades and decades, and it never really gets old because they're so good at innovating on the formula. Same with Zelda. They can have the most bare bones story and make the most incredible game out of it. I want to be a fan of them, but it's so hard to be a fan when they just keep screwing over the consumer and going after the people that really just want to enjoy their old games. They want to go through the classic catalog. They're fans that want to do this. They're the ones buying the games. They're not the ones pirating them. They just want to experience the old games. That's the only way they can. It just really sucks. Again, to give them a little modicum of goodwill here, faith here, it is a completely different country with different values, different like perspective on things. So I can't be like a fair judge here and say from my perspective in the United States that my perspective is right and theirs is wrong. We have different cultures, different values. I understand. So I need to make that clear as well. We don't have the same worldviews, especially from a business perspective. So it's not fair to judge them so harshly. I don't boycott their products, but man, I'm just getting so fed up of seeing this happen. And it doesn't look like they have any intention of stopping anytime soon. I know they're going to be going after more file sharing sites, more emulators. Even if they're legal emulators, they're absolutely going to go after them. We don't want to lose 3DS emulators either, but you know, that's Nintendo for you. So I don't know. I just wanted to rant about this. I know I talked about a subject kind of similar to this before, but I'm getting tired of Nintendo doing this. Focus on the future. Focus on your new products. I understand if you want to go after pirates, but don't go after the people making emulators. People just want to preserve and enjoy your games, or like dump their own files online so they can have a better resolution for playing their Switch games. Play it on their PC. Don't go after those people that are just wanting to enjoy your games even more. Go after the people actually pirating your games. Get to the bottom of the people pirating them and and cut off the source. Get rid of them. Have better methods of not letting your files get cracked. I don't know what it is, but stop going after the people that just want to enjoy your games. That's all I wanted to talk about today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.